Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Yeah, well, welcome to D.C.
Yeah,
I wish it was a little bit nicer of a day.
Yes, but the snow looks good.
Yeah, there you go.
Doesn't feel good. But
Inside.
Anyway, thank you so much. We are here in Washington, D.C. because Governor Abbott is coming to visit to really press his case for Congress to reimburse the state of Texas $11.1 billion that the state has spent to secure the border.
Yeah.
Why do you believe this is justified, and do you think this will pass?
Look, Texas spends a lot of money on federal taxes. We send, I think it's the number third in the country in the amount of taxes that Texas spends. Part of those dollars are supposed to go to protect our border. And the fact is that not only did they open up our borders, but Texas had to pay additional money to be able to protect them. If it was not for Operation Lone Star, we would have had at least millions of more people in this country. But I know that we in Texas had detained at least 500,000 illegal immigrants that came through, not to mention the amount of fentanyl that we had caught, number of terrorists that we caught. So I think the rest of the country owes a great deal of gratitude to the state of Texas for doing the job that the federal government did not do. But not in addition to the amount of money that Texas had to spend, we were also fighting our own federal government and those policies. They were coming down, and as President Biden was going and fighting what Texas was doing. Governor Abbott would put up safeguards to protect our border, and then you saw President Biden suing the state and then forcing folks coming down here and doing things like cutting up the razor wire that was protecting our border. So I absolutely am supportive of Texas getting those dollars back because it already sent to the country, to the federal government, to be able to do the job that the federal government did not do.
Do you think this will pass, though, because you got members from all over the United States, and are you having conversations with other members of Congress about this?
And of course we are. And I think that, especially in the Republican conference, they recognize the job that Texas had to do. And it was just kind of funny when you start thinking about it, several months ago, that the Biden administration was taking credit for Operations Lone Star's success and talking about the number of people who had stopped coming to the border. That was as a direct result of Texas and their outlay of money, effort, and resources. We had wanted to try to continue building of the wall. That was stopped. There were so many policies that were put in place by this last administration that Texas had to fight. And I think the rest of our colleagues recognize that. It was a disaster, but also potentially a national terrorist threat when you start thinking about the people who are on the terrorist watch list that came over. And so Texas has had to deal with that. We all say that every state at this point is a border state. Some of us are really a border state. And when you start thinking about the 40 to 60% of the people who entered our country illegally coming through Texas, we actually had to take a lot more undue burden than most of the other states in the country. And as a result, we had to step up and do what we could to not only protect Texans, but the rest of the country.
Right now, House and Senate Republicans are trying to figure out a reconciliation bill to get the Trump agenda passed, as far as the border, as far as taxes and energy. But I'm wondering, how might this request by Governor Abbott fit into that reconciliation package?
Well, we're looking at what we can do to protect the border. I mean, we want to make sure that that is in there. It's providing Tom Homan the resources that he needs to deal with, specifically prioritizing the criminal illegal aliens that are in our country. And I think Governor Abbott is not just asking for a handout. These are legitimate costs that he can defend, but he's also coming and saying, how can we partner? Trump administration, how can we partner with you to do what we need to do? Whether or not that's land that he's offering up to be able to use for detaining these criminal illegals that we need to have before we send them back to the country of origin, or is it detention facilities that we can actually hold them so we're not having to build more and more and spend money on that. So he's not coming empty-handed. This is a true partnership that he is offering, and as a result, I think we recognize that. The reconciliation package is going to be large. We're going to have to include, provisions from border and all the resources that Tom Homan has requested. But we're also looking at making sure that we've got policies in there for American energy independence and to make sure that we are having production from our energy producers. Then we're also looking at a tax bill. I'm on Ways and Means. We've been looking at that for over 2 years now. We've been talking to every member of the conference. Each of us has had an opportunity to talk to our constituents to recognize how important that is. And let me just tell you, the National Manufacturers Association has given us some stats just for Texas 24. And if we don't get our tax bill passed, not only are 90% of tax-paying Americans going to feel some of the largest tax increases that they've ever felt in our nation's history, but at risk is 23,000 jobs in Texas' 24th district, is $2.6 billion of wages and $5.3 billion of GDP just in 24th district of Texas. So we are making sure that we get that tax bill passed, which is extending the tax provisions from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which was so amazingly successful. We brought back manufacturing jobs from overseas back to our country. We saw wages increases, and we saw definitely strong uptakes in our economy as a direct result. And we want to make sure that those provisions are saved, extended, and strengthened.
What do you say to Democrats, because they've criticized the Trump tax cuts and have said that it's really just for the 1%ers?
Yeah, I would say that they need to listen to their constituents. Chairman Jason Smith of Ways and Means, we've spent the last 2 years, and he's been very diligent in getting outside of D.C. and going and having field hearings across the country where we're talking to people that would be affected directly if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions were not extended. Nearly every single district in this country, I can tell you, has talked to their Congress member and told them how important it is. So if they're still questioning it, don't talk to us in D.C. Go home and talk to the people it's going to affect.
Regarding tariffs, I know that there is a 30-day pause in place for Mexico and Canada as far as additional tariffs on them. And I'm wondering, as you know, Texas is the largest exporting state by far.
By far.
In the United States.
Bigger than California and New York combined.
Right. It's 440 billion or something like that. So I'm wondering, how much of a concern is this? Because small businesses and large businesses, I would imagine, are concerned about the threat of tariffs. And everybody says the businesses don't pay tariffs, the consumer pays it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, making sure that we're protecting job opportunities of American businesses is going to be key. And since the time when I was mayor of Irving, we had American businesses that were located in the city come and talk to us and tell us right now about how U.S. is actually handcuffed. U.S. businesses are handcuffed, and we're having to compete with Mexico, with Canada, with China unfairly. And this is just evening out the playing field. How we're taxed and tariffed in other countries is how we're going to respond in kind. And for far too long, we have allowed ourselves to be abused, and it has hurt our economy. It has hurt job opportunities in our country, and it's time we start pushing back. And I think what you've seen already is just when it comes to protecting our border, the outcry of support now from both Canada and Mexico, but also from Colombia with just the threat of tariffs. It's a powerful tool.
So at the end of the day, do you think those tariffs will be imposed? And have you had any conversations with the president or his staff about the concerns that some people have, that they're worried about this?
They've been very strong about reaching out to all the members and making sure that our concerns and what we're hearing in our districts, we are sharing with them. So again, what I have heard is for the most part, we want to make sure that we are competitive with the rest of the country, that we do so much in imports and exports, that to have our hands tied behind our backs and not punching back, making sure that the trade agreements that we have signed, that the other countries are actually held accountable to living up to, that has to happen. And so, tariffs are a great negotiating tool. I think that's how this administration is using them. It's not necessarily a great revenue raiser. I don't think that they're counting on that. But what they are counting on is this is going to make American businesses much more competitive with the rest of the world, and it's going to stop the abuse that we've seen in the U.S. at least over the last 4 years. When we were down in Mexico, we saw it firsthand.
Doge.
Yeah.
So everybody's talking about it. There's obviously some criticism about Elon Musk and how he's running things. Has there been anything in the way that you've seen so far that concerns you? And just about the effort altogether, has any massive fraud and abuse been identified yet in your mind?
I have been a big proponent of this type of regulations being removed from the government for years. I was talking about Doge before Doge was a thing, and we look at how far over the skis a lot of these agencies have gotten. They're not being held accountable. I have introduced legislation in the 117th, 118th, and now in the 119th legislative session that will look at third-party audits. I think that has to happen. I think that must happen. GAO is responsible for doing it. They haven't done it. And you asked, do you have examples? Look at the things that Elon Musk in 2 weeks has already uncovered. I don't hear any Democrat defending those items that he has called out to the public. What they are defending is saying that he is an unelected member of our community who's calling this out. I would have them remind them that all the bureaucrats right now that come up with these regulations, all of them are unelected bureaucrats that come up with these ideas. I would argue Fauci was not an elected member, but look at how much control that they gave him. Other members, Bill Gates, Soros, those are all unelected. But where was their concern when we had Biden in the White House, who obviously wasn't in charge? Who was in charge? Where are these questions now? I think what is happening is you've got Elon Musk, who is doing a great service by going in and looking at areas that we can cut, because we all know that there is a tremendous amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in our government. We just don't have a third party going in there and identifying it. Because usually what happens is the bureaucrats, they protect their own. And that's what we've seen, even with the GAO's office. So when you're going in and you're seeing and identifying specific projects, programs that are being funded by millions, billions of dollars, and those are getting called out, you're talking about openness, you're talking about transparency, and you're being very detailed oriented. Again, I haven't heard any Democrat defend those things that he's pulled out. They just don't like it that you have somebody who's unelected doing it. And look, he is an advisor to the president. Nobody's going to defend and say that you can't have advisors to the president, because everyone has. And you have a duly elected president who's making those decisions and who has decided from listening, to people across the country that that's a priority. Let's get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm not going to defend it. And I can't imagine why Democrats would take that path, that they want to defend that type of abuse of our taxpayer dollars.
Last question, and that is, the Congress, though, is still going to have to make the cuts.
Oh, yeah.
And is that really going to happen?
I think we have to identify what needs to be cut first. We all talk about, fat, and we hear from bureaucrats, well, there's so much more work to be done. We need more people, we need more money, we need more funding. Well, the fact is that if we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing, cut that back. Let's focus on the things that we should be focused on. Border security, trade. Those are things that as a federal government we should be focused on, that we spend so much time on growing the levels and levels of bureaucracy, growing the amount of regulations that don't mean anything, that are complete waste, that are, in a number of cases, you've got agency after agency doing it, and they're slightly different, but everybody is doing it, and you just keep growing the size of government. Get rid of that. Again, I can't imagine who's going to defend that, but I've had bills in place. I mean, we did it for small business. We're looking at doing it for all the government agencies. When we had a meeting with DOJ just a couple of months ago, and one of the things I pulled out was, I said, look, I had a bill for SBA that said for every regulation that you introduce, you have to identify the cost. Say how much it's going to cost, and then it has to be budget negative or budget neutral, meaning that you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to clean up the level of regulations that are timeless now, that are unnecessary now, or that other agencies are doing, or that we just don't even need. We have an opportunity to do that. I think expecting that Congress is going to do this every single session is a pipe dream. We need to make sure that it is created as part of our system of checks and balances, and make it automatic. And I think looking at regulations that are deficit neutral is one way of doing it, but making sure that the agencies are held accountable. And if that's through a third-party audit, again, I've introduced legislation to do that. You're seeing that with DOJ right now. That needs to happen.
Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne in Washington.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Great to see you.